Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Medevac podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you're getting something out of today's episode. And we have a radical guest today. Radical. I guarantee you're going to get something out of our episode with Lieutenant Colonel retired Eric Lindsay. Eric is a former armor officer in the Army. He spent about 21 years in the Army doing that, and he sustained an interesting accident in Korea that left him being a quadriplegic. Not letting that stop him in the least. And Eric is also the recipient of a Robert Irvine Foundation Mobius iBot, which we'll touch on a little bit. If you guys haven't seen those, pretty cool off-roading wheelchair. It's got some really cool capabilities that help enable people who are confined to a chair. So, Eric, welcome.
Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you. Pleasure and honor to be here.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Yeah, should we call you Colonel?
Nope. That's in the rearview mirror, man. It's Eric. Eric or dude or bro or whatever, but not Lieutenant Colonel.
Actually, an interesting comment that you said. It's a thing of the past, because oftentimes, especially with those that you've seen injured, really embrace that identity of the past, of their past military experience. So, we typically start with how you joined the military, but that was such an interesting comment. Like, how do you get past that, as well as, hey, this was a thing in the past. What does that future look like now?
Yeah.
And we can think about that. One. Let's rewind it back first. Let's rewind it back a little bit. A little scatterbrain today.
It's all right. Yeah.
Because you look like the thought hat was coming on there.
Sure.
Okay, so military service, why did you join? Like, what inspired you to enlist into the Army? I'm sorry, commission into the Army.
Gosh, I mean, there's a history of military service in my family. My grandfather served in World War II in Korea.
Okay.
My dad was in the reserves, but we weren't a military family. I grew up in a very middle class background in Eastern Washington State. I had always been interested in the military, and I always had kind of a fascination, as morbid as this sounds, with war, because it just seemed like such a strange event.
Yeah.
So after high school, I kind of struggled in terms of finding a purpose and direction. And then Desert Storm happened. And I remember watching on TV all these young guys and girls going to a foreign country to try to fix something that was wrong. And I was just really inspired by their sense of service and duty. And I didn't quite understand, and maybe a little naive on my part at the time, but it just really struck me. I was like, I want to be part of something like that.
Sure.
That seems important. And so that kind of became the direction. My dad kind of helped me out with, learning how to set goals, and I went to a couple of seminars and stuff like that. And, that was 1991. I finished junior college, went to university, enrolled in ROTC, got commissioned in 1995, and became an armor officer. And first assignment was Korea. So I think that sense of duty, that sense of service, of, in some ways, right versus wrong, good versus evil. It's overly simplistic in hindsight, but that's really what probably drove me to join the military.
Sure.
A lot of people don't like to explore that portion of it. There's kind of the glorification of war when you're young.
Right.
And that changes quite dramatically once you're in, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. For sure. I would be lying if I said that as a young officer or even a young ROTC cadet, I wasn't intrigued or fascinated or even maybe a little intoxicated with the idea of going to war and fighting and doing all those things. And wow.
Yeah. Naivety, I suppose.
Complete naivety. and candidly, my experiences are probably a little bit less severe than others. I mean, my experiences were not terribly traumatic, but it was bad enough that I'm like, yeah, I never want to see that again.
Sure,
Don't ever
yeah.
want to do that again.
Absolutely.
I definitely don't want my nieces and nephews ever having to do that again. And I say that, and I don't mean to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but there's a time and a place for war. There's a time and a place to fight. There's a time and a place to stand up and do the right thing, even when it is going to be horrific and tragic. And that's probably for a different conversation. But yeah,
well, I think that kind of goes to show, like when we're watching Desert Storm, and you're going through the whole gambit there.
Right.
You think that, hey, this is what we're doing, changing something that's wrong here, and then years later, could go by. We dealt with this in GWAT as well as like, we figured, oh, there was a lot more of an agenda behind that than what I originally signed up for.
100%.
Yeah.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Completely.
Unfortunately, it happens. It happens kind of in conjunction with the generational growth too, right?
Sure.
You get this big group of 18 to 24-year-olds who are enlisting or being enlisted and fighting along that cause, and it doesn't come to realization what was behind it for maybe another 15, 20 years. Much like Vietnam, same thing happened when they got into their 30s and 40s post Vietnam era. They realized, oh, there was a little bit more behind this.
Right.
And same with us as we've gotten older
Right.
into a more adulthood. We kind of realize, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't have been so young and dumb. But I think it just happens. Kind of coincides at the same time.
Agreed.
They
Totally
certainly know what they're doing, right? We've had plenty of recruiters on that spend a long time recruiting, and those who same drill sergeants as well. The concepts that they have of who they go after, who they market towards.
Sure.
Young, moldable, and then once you go to basic training or boot camp, to break down that societal norm of what you expect, how to function in civilization, and recreate someone from the ground up, essentially.
Very much so.
It's very interesting.
It is. It's fascinating. It's, I mean, you could argue in some manner it's a psychological operation, right?
It's a cult. That's what I...
Right? Yeah, it's a cult.
It is.
Right.
Biggest cult in the world.
The best art cult, too.
Yeah, right.
Most successful. Absolutely.
Makes the Branch Davidians look like, choir kids.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But definitely, there's components to it that I think echo with every service member across the board. One of which is selfless service, right?
Yep.
I think that at the end of the day, we can make all the jokes in the world and say there's hidden agendas and all this stuff, but the selfless service, the brother and sisterhood that you have, the left and right, is what really makes the whole experience a reality, right?
Absolutely. One thing that dawned on me, especially as I was getting close to commissioning, was, and I'm a student of history. I study history in college. I've always been interested in history, even in high school, and enjoyed it. But swearing an oath to the Constitution was incredibly important to me. And for all of the faults of our country, for all of the checkered history that we have, the Constitution is an amazing document when you look at it through the lens of history and what created it and why we have it. Mm-hmm. And so that was always very important to me. It's part of the reason why I can look at my military service in the past. Because I swore an oath to defend the Constitution. I took that oath very seriously. I did it to the best of my ability. Was, just to be candid, was Iraq the right war to fight? Was Afghanistan the right war to fight? Maybe not. Maybe. I don't know. But all I know is I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And I was a volunteer. So I could have walked away whenever it was time to walk away. Or if I could have walked away when I felt like I had a moral conflict.
Sure.
And I didn't, because I took that oath very seriously. I take that oath as seriously as I take my vows to my wife. Mm-hmm. It is something that is, my word is my bond. And if I can't follow my word, then I don't really have a lot of integrity at that point, from my perspective, in my opinion. And I've always felt if you don't have your own integrity, personal integrity, that's a problem.
It is a problem.
Yeah. And what kind of true leader can you be in the military? Too,
100%.
right? If you're
100%.
if you're not believing the things that you're trying to imbue on those that you're in charge of,
Right.
take care of.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can't stand in front of a 9-man infantry squad or a 16-man tank platoon or a ranger company or an infantry battalion and tell them, hey, we're going to do everything we can to take care of you. We're going into some hairy stuff in the near future. You have to trust us that we have your best intent, your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
It's going to suck. Some of you are going to get killed, but you got to know that we're there to help you as best we can. If you don't have integrity, your soldiers are not going to go forward and do what you ask them to do.
Yeah.
Because they don't trust you.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's not easy. That's maybe one of the hardest challenges of leadership.
Yeah.
Is building that trust. So it's always been really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really important to me.
And they always say that politics are for those who survive war. So really you don't see it while you're in it, right? And you're very correct as they look out for the best interest. They're trying to get you home safe. No one wants to see someone die, right? So it is quite the environment. Now you said something interesting enough. Student history, right? There, that age-old question of like, how are we doomed to repeat ourselves if we don't learn from some of those lessons? What are some of those things that you see today, in comparison to past history that we're doing and we should probably maybe pivot or change so that we're not doomed to repeat? It's a tough question.
Wow. There's so much to unpack there.
It is.
It's a good one.
I think you have to give the military a singular purpose. A military's purpose is to go forth and fight and win the war or wars. And when you start diluting that purpose, you begin to undercut the military's ability to execute that mission effectively. I don't want to sound isolationist, but I also think we got to be real careful about I'm probably not qualified to say this because it's such a high level. From a lay person perspective, I think we're trying to do too much abroad. And we got real
Stretch
problems.
thin.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we got real problems at home that need to be dealt with. We got another real problem developing in Florida right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we're going to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sure I've answered your question, David.
No, I think that those are great points, and it is, you kind of like eggshell around. At the end of the day, you are a lieutenant colonel, and everybody's kind of dealing with their own things. But you're right. I think there is so much stuff going on overseas that's clear to see, but there's problems brewing at home.
Huge problems.
I think your I don't want to say hesitance, but your hesitance to land on a singular answer is kind of the answer in itself, right? There is an ample amount going on in the world between you got Russia and Ukraine, we've got the Middle East kicking off, we've got multiple large category hurricanes annihilating the U.S. right now. So your reluctance or hesitance to answer because it's hard to land on a singular answer. We are, just like you said, we're doing a lot right now. There is a lot going on in the world,
right? That
unfortunately the U.S. military has elected or has been attached to a majority of these issues. We have to support and defend what's going on on the European front, on the Middle East front. We have thousands of National Guardsmen and active duty personnel.
An election
on the
year.
East Coast in an election year. Like there's a lot of stuff going on.
Which election years alone are stressful for the company, the country.
I would I'd actually even back up a little bit to what we were talking about in terms of leadership and integrity. And, in 1990 and 1991, Secretary of State James Baker told, I believe, the President Gorbachev, NATO will not move 1 inch east. He said, it's documented. Multiple people have said it. And then what did we do? NATO turned around and, we're going east. And they did the Baltic. Then they did Eastern Europe. And we lied. The U.S. is part of NATO. We lied. So how do we expect anybody to take us seriously as a country if we don't honor what we tell other countries?
Integrity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so no wonder so much of the world is a mess right now. And it's not I don't even think it's a partisan political thing.
No.
We all have our opinions about the current administration and previous administrations. And, you can't even say Trump without people cringing. I don't think it has anything to do with our political parties. I think it has something to do with what do we value as a nation? What's important principally as a country?
So maybe fair to say that we're losing a little sense of our identity.
I feel that's true. I think that's a great way to articulate what I'm trying to say. And I don't think it ends well if we can't figure that out.
I think and what a interesting subject to skirt around, right? Because it is an eggshell topic. Like, these conversations when we talk about loss of identity here. I mean, we can't even identify who we are, and I think that we're getting fixated on ideology that really doesn't, move the needle forward in this country, right? I think we're getting fixated on the small things, and we also can't take criticism anymore, right? There used to be a point where you debated. You had debates. It's not a screaming match. It's not like pulling this guy down or knocking him down. It's about disagreeing, and coming to an understanding together.
Right.
I think that's a thing too. We're so on either side of the spectrum here that we can't meet in the middle and to make good decisions for this country right now.
Agreed. I totally agree.
So that loss of identity is a real thing.
I think it is, and in some ways, you can almost analogize it like exercise. Your body gets stronger and stays healthy when you do resistance training, lifting weights, or when you run. When you stress the system, you stay healthy, you stay fit. But if you don't stress that system, you get less and less and less healthy, and you become more susceptible to disease. You become more susceptible to almost everything, mental and physical problems.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if maybe that's part of what's going on in our country is we're not resisting. We're not doing something that strengthens us.
Challenging ourselves.
Correct.
You're absolutely right. I mean, since the dawn of time, there has been the rites of passage, right? There's been trials and tribulations to, achieve manhood or whatever it is across the board. You've earned that right. You've gone through something very difficult, something challenging, where you could define a moment in your life where you've kind of unshed that past skin and become something else.
Right.
We've gotten complacent. We've gotten so complacent. Interesting conversation I was having the other day is about, back in the day before there were cell phones, like you had kids running around with casts on. How many casts do you see?
Never, not anymore.
Yeah, and what happened? Like you used to jump out of trees and jump down slides and do the monkey bars and go play outside with your friends. And now these guys, they sneeze and they throw their back out.
Right. Right.
And
I can't eat peanuts.
It's because
I can't eat milk, or I can't
the
breathe.
allergies are going up.
Yeah.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
The like obesity in children. When we were kids, even like you didn't have right?
No, not the rate it is.
Type 2?
Yeah, I mean, today it's 45% of children at the age of 12 or older.
The statistics are stunning.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And they're not teaching this in medical school. There's not a single nutrition class that they teach. You know, like this kind of thing is just accepted now as well.
Because they'll write you a prescription for Ozempic.
Yeah. It's reactionary.
It really is.
Yeah, there's no stop to analyze the metabolic factors that are playing into it.
100%.
I think an underlying thing really that we're talking about here is there's loss of identity, but the underlying issue, I think, is just a sense of not looking out for a fellow man. Is let's deepen our pockets. At what point do you make so much money where you're just out to fuck everybody else?
Right.
That's a question mark I have.
Yeah,
100%. I totally agree.
Or a loss of individual ownership too, because a lot of people are looking for somebody else to have the answer instead of find the answer for themselves.
Agreed.
Or take responsibility ultimately.
And that's going to get worse. That's going to get worse, especially with like AI and all these like tools now where, when you used to write a paper, you had, like, you remember in school, you had to sit down, take you weeks to write these papers. And even one page, you'd be like, all day job. And I'm freaking striking through all day. Now you don't need that anymore. I have an app that you could look up that information. You could plug in that information. You could do all the research for you anymore. So where does that creativity go? It's displaced. And to your point,
it's the easy button.
it's no longer on yourself.
Yeah. It's
someone else has the answer. Yeah. It's crazy world.
It's so hard to it's just so hard to stay positive, frankly, right now, what's going on.
Yeah.
I think ultimately it comes back to almost a stoic mentality of I'm only going to worry about what I can control, what I can affect. Mm-hmm. And in most cases, it's about that.
3 feet wide.
Tip,
yeah.
And, caster to the top of my head. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to, personally, this is Eric's philosophy. I'm just going to do the best I can with that little space. I'm going to have opinions on stuff.
Sure.
And, I'm maybe wrong on a lot of those opinions too, but I'm going to have them.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to share them. But at the end of the day, I'm going to worry about what I can control and what I can do. And to some extent, that's why military's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
That's past. I can't do anything about that anymore. It's those rounds have been fired, and now it's just time to focus on the next thing and do the next mission or the next task or the next part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, staying positive, especially being in a chair, it's tough.
Yeah.
I didn't have years in a chair, but I was in a chair for a good bit of time, and it is relearning. Who you are. You're kind of redefining who you are. So I get like kind of shedding that past. Let's talk a little bit about like how that experience was for you. I mean, you went from a military leader, a military officer in Korea, and had a horrific accident. So what did that look like for you? So first of all, can you walk us through like the initial stage? I know you said you don't remember much, but you.
I had a routine that me and a buddy of mine did. We did CrossFit during the week, and then on the weekends, Saturdays usually we go for a bike ride. It's kind of like almost a recreational but physical fitness type thing. And so we go ride along the river, the Han River in Seoul. So I was going to meet him Saturday afternoon. I really didn't want to go that day. It was late in the day.
Saturday afternoon meeting.
Yeah. And we were just going to, I was going to link up and go for a ride and then be done. But I wanted to get some exercise. So I'm going to meet him, and I decided I got to the sidewalk, and I was going to, the gate was, 500 or 600 yards away. I was going to ride down the sidewalk, get on the street, and go to the gate. I don't know what happened. I knew I had to do a little jump off of a curb into the street, and I woke up in a Korean hospital. And It was, candidly, there's not a lot of it that I really remember clearly. I think I was on a lot of painkillers and medications, and I remember fading in and out a lot. I frankly don't remember a lot of pain until they put me in traction. I remember that very clearly, and that was not pleasant. That sucked. I don't think actually it dawned on me what really had happened until we got back. The Army evacuated us about a week after the accident, after I'd had a fusion surgery. They got us back here. We went to a spinal cord facility in the VA. And I don't think it dawned on me what was going on until almost a month, maybe a month and a half after the accident. I couldn't move hardly anything. In fact, when they put me on the airplane in Korea to come to the States, I could do that. That's about it.
Wow.
General Scaparrotti, the USFK commander, came to the hospital while I was there just to check on me. And I tried to salute from my bed, and I literally, it was just a catastrophe. So by the time we got back to the States, I think I'd been in the VA about a month. It started to dawn on me that this was going to be a pretty dramatic change. I was diving into physical therapy every day, a couple hours a day, doing the best I could, trying as hard as I could to make things work. And slowly started seeing progress. Things started to come back. And at one point, my therapist said, "Oh, look, you can do that." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's pretty cool. All right." It's almost just surreal, frankly. I don't know how else to describe it. Going from one day being able-bodied and relatively fit, and starting to think about the next phase after the Army. I had actually started the retirement process. I was ready to get out. Was ready to go do something else. And all of a sudden now, I can't even get out of bed without help.
Yeah.
Can't do little things like go to the bathroom without help.
And I'm sure there was just tons of thoughts that are coming by. It's like, what if I didn't go to that meeting?
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
I was just about to get out. I mean, there's 1,000 thoughts going through your mind, I'm sure.
Oh, very much so. That is probably replayed in my head hundreds of times. What if I had just stayed home? What if I had just not gone on the ride, called my buddy and said, "Hey, I'm not going to make it today," and just, whatever. And things would clearly be different. But my wife has made some very, I feel like prescient observations. She's like, "Well, yeah, you might not have gotten hurt. You might not have, fractured your neck. But who's to say something else wouldn't have happened?"
Yeah.
And whether you're fatalistic or not, we never know. And that's one of the takeaways for me is I woke up that morning not thinking that by the end of the day I was going to be paralyzed. I woke up that morning thinking, yeah, okay, cool. My wife and I had dinner last night, and it was fun. We're going to go run some errands today, probably go for a bike ride later. Just standard stuff. And in the snap of a finger, it changed.
Yeah.
Just strange.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. We just don't know.
It's easy to take it for granted every day.
100%.
Until you
100%.
Until you're faced with that decision, or
Right.
until you're faced with that circumstance.
I joke around with people, I'm trying to remember the context, but somebody was talking about leg pain or something like that, or they were walking and said, "Hey, don't skip leg day." Don't skip leg day.
It's my favorite to just mess with people all the time. And, one of my favorites is like, they're like, "Oh, I put my foot in my mouth," and I'm just like, "Oh, that's in poor taste."
How dare you?
How dare you? Rude. But you kind of have to be lighthearted about it a little
100%.
bit. And I think, how many how many injured vets have we met at this point? Almost all of them have this just like very peculiar personality piece to them, right?
Right.
I remember walking to the CFI where you did your recovery too, and I'm sitting there, I'm getting leg adjustments. I'm new to this whole thing, so a little sensitive about it, right? You're sensitive at first. And this guy looks at me and he goes, "Oh, that's a nice flesh wound there." And he's sitting there with 3 limbs missing, and I'm just like, "Oh man, I suppose you're right." You know, what do you
Could always
say?
be worse.
You know, I think as service members, we tend to have somewhat morbid sense of humor sometimes.
Sure.
And so, you know, I think in some cases this just amplifies it a little bit. If you can't take it, you can't take it seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's serious and it's definitely life altering, but I personally there's times where it's better to just laugh at it. So, you know what? It is what it is. I can't get all butthurt about it because, you know, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
You just keep moving.
Yeah.
You just can't let it.
And take it kind of day by day too.
Right.
So with your recovery and your physical therapy with that as well, I'm sure it was quite grueling, and there was days that you didn't want to, you know, get up and move.
Absolutely.
How did that look like for you? You said under traction they had, like, you remember?
Yeah. When we were in traction was in Korea pre-surgery. They did a fusion where they took hardware and connected my C5, C6, and C7 with titanium rods. I'm sure there's a medical reason why they did it, but I'm not 100% sure what it is. But prior to that, they did traction to make sure that my spine was straight before they did surgery.
Gotta be.
And I remember they put this thing on your head. It's like a net, and then it's got this rope that hangs off, and there's a weight at the bottom, and they lay you on the table, and then they hang this thing over, and your neck's hanging over too. And I screamed. I might have actually passed out.
Wow.
I was in so much pain. But I definitely remember screaming. I definitely remember being incredibly uncomfortable. And I think
Why
I was
don't
in.
they give you something for that?
Good question. I don't know.
Just knock you out. You don't need. The more loosey goosey you are, the better it's going to be. I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't remember. I mean, literally, I remember them putting me on the table, setting that thing down, and just excruciating pain. And then I think they may have given me something. Maybe that's why I don't remember it past that initial pain period. But you know, again, everything was such a blur at that point. I just had no concept of what was going on. I do remember that I was running a fever, and they kept wanting to do the fusion surgery. They kept wanting to do it day after day, and they're like, "We got to get this done." But I had a fever, and they were very nervous about putting me under and going into surgery with the fever that I was running. And I think at some point they just decided, okay, we've got to do this. Otherwise, it's going to be really problematic for him.
Catastrophic.
Yeah,
after that.
potentially. I think. I'm assuming that's the case.
Yeah, the more delayed you have on these kind of surgeries, the
Right.
less chances of success.
And I think they ended up waiting almost 5 days as it was.
Oh, wow.
And then we literally 2 or 3 days after that, they put us on an airplane and flew us back to the States. So.
And you began your stateside recovery from there?
I did. Unfortunately, I didn't do therapy at the CFI. I actually did almost all my therapy at the VA.
Okay.
The CFI, I think, would have been great. I would have loved to have been able to do therapy there, but what I understood, and I'm speculating a little bit, is they're very much oriented towards amputees.
It was.
And more of those traumatic type injuries. And they're not really equipped to deal with a quadriplegic level or severe cervical level injury. So we interviewed. I wanted to get in there. It wasn't going to work because I needed a little bit more help than they could provide.
Sure. So were you at the VA here in San Antonio?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah. Audie Murphy over just I don't know, center north San Antonio.
Yeah, the big VA hospital here in town.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you were you inpatient there, or did you guys like end up PCSing here? And
I was inpatient there for 4.5 months.
okay.
In the spinal cord ward, which is down on the basement. And I mean, it is what it is. It was weird.
Yeah.
You live in a hospital for 4.5 months, you're kind of like, wow.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Fluorescent lights and white floors and
Right. And people
Shitty
coming in the middle. Yeah. Right. I lost some weight. That was pretty cool. People coming in the middle of the night, and rolling you over and
Poking
all
and
kinds of
prodding.
stuff. So
Yeah, it's like the little, you don't get any sleep
No.
in these things. Like they wake you up every couple hours to take your heart rate
Right.
and check if you got a fever and all this.
you got to get rest.
Yeah, you rest up. You just woke me up at 2 a.m.
leave me alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the best part is the sippy cups.
And the Jello, right?
Oh God.
Oh, that's funny.
Daily Jello.
So you started getting some functionality back in your upper body.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, and where did that come? Was that like grueling effort to get that level of movement, or did it just kind of naturally come over time? Are you seeing a difference like throughout the years, getting a little bit more back? Like what does that look like?
I started getting more and more function back while I was inpatient. And we were the physical therapy there was in hindsight it was kind of rudimentary. It was a lot of trying to work on balance and things like that. And a little bit of occupational therapy, trying to get my fingers to work. I think really most of the gains came back after I got out of the hospital. There's a facility in San Antonio called Beyond the Chair. Mm-hmm. And it's a neuro rehab facility run by Nito Blockinger, unsolicited shout out. And so I started going there to do therapy. I stopped doing therapy at the VA, started working out at Beyond the Chair, and did that pretty intensively for about 5 years. A couple of times a week. Started trying to push a manual wheelchair instead of using a power chair. A friend of mine had visited us while we were, shortly after I got out of the hospital. Very, very good friend of mine and Army officer. He pulled me aside. I was in a power chair exclusively at that point. He said, "Hey man, you need to get out of that power chair. You need to start pushing a manual chair around because that's the only way you're going to get healthy. That's the only way you're going to get strength back." And his father had suffered a pretty severe back injury and had kind of done that.
Okay.
And that was kind of a bolt out of the blue. I think maybe there was a little bit of self-pity going on at that point. And he just kind of said, "Hey, no, this isn't you. You need to take ownership, responsibility. You need to start working." And that's what I did.
That's a good friend.
Yeah, a very good friend. Chris Thomas, you're the man. And so that started it. And between that and going to Beyond the Chair, I started pushing my wheelchair around our neighborhood every day. And I think that all kind of started to generate more and more return. The return came back kind of weird, though. It's my right is pretty strong. My left is not as strong.
Okay.
I've always been right-hand dominant, so that probably has something to do with it.
It seems like you have more dexterity in your left hand versus your right, though.
It's
at the same
strange.
time.
I have a little bit more grip in this hand than
Okay.
I do this hand, but I don't have nearly the range of motion that I have in this one. So
That's so interesting how that.
it's bizarre.
It's so bizarre.
If I wasn't 55 years old, I'd probably look at trying to understand neurology a little bit better than I do. So,
Well, speaking of, I'm sure there's some cutting edge tech that you've been reading up on, huh? Mm-hmm. There's with Neuralink coming out. There's all these interesting medical procedures that are about to happen now, and I can only imagine with the implementation of AI,
yeah.
to shortcut away some of the blocks that are going on with that.
Right.
They say that blindness, certain forms of blindness are going to be obsolete in the next couple of years.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
It'd be incredible.
That would be so amazing.
It is, and like, I mean, you kind of mentioned before we started the show here, like, can you imagine, going through a surgery for, being in the hospital for a month and then getting up,
walking
chicken,
out of the hospital,
sprinting.
Yeah, you roll in a chair and you run out as fast as you can afterwards.
I would run
gone.
out.
Yeah, that would just be amazing.
I'm still waiting for the kind of the Deadpool like pill to come out where my like little baby leg comes and grows back. That would be great.
That would be spectacular.
It's kind of interesting conversations that we all have internally. Like, I'm sure you've had several conversations where you're just like, what would I do? Like, what would that look like? I do it all the time. I'm like, I would probably be an ultra marathon runner. And then you think about it and then you get there and you're like, nah, not today. I'll do it tomorrow.
But that's so true. This seems strange, but I hated running.
Yeah.
I've never been a good runner. I've just always sucked at it.
Yeah.
I've always felt it was more of a form of punishment than anything else.
Yeah.
And maybe that's from high school football.
Yeah,
but
the military also drives it into just
right.
We're gonna go till you throw up with the pee mask on.
Exactly. 5 days a week. So make sure you clean out your mask at night.
Right after you had a whole Jack Daniels bottle after this weekend, we're gonna go in Monday to a 12-mile run. Yeah, I get why it's called negative.
But I have found myself like, man, I would love to be able to go for a run. Mm-hmm. As much as I hated it, there's something about losing it that wants it to come back, that you want to get it back. Mm-hmm. I'd like to mow my yard.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds, I would really not mind being able to mow my yard. So it's strange how you miss these things that you used to either take for granted or despised, and now all of a sudden it's like, well, gosh, yeah.
Well, the wheelchair is I mean, amplified significantly than a prosthetic for sure. I mean, there's just little teeny things that people don't see and understand. Like, for instance, I have a driveway that's 2 cars wide, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go over the grass, and it's a whole thing. And
right.
There's steps and ledges, and eye contact I know is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how does that feel when people are just looking down at conversations, or they take a knee next to you like you're a child? Or, that's got to be frustrating.
It is. To some extent, it is. The eye level contact. I don't know how to articulate it very well. It can feel a little demeaning sometimes. Mm. There's almost like this instinct that people have when you sit lower than they normally do. They like want to put their arm on you or rub your head or something like that.
Yeah,
and you kind of like, okay. I mean, if I was looking at you eye to eye, would you?
Yeah.
Really
put your hand on the back of their head.
Right.
So
weird.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, this is.
I'm going to do that to standing people now.
Sorry, it's for my time in the chair.
Right. Yeah. I'm just going to put my hand on the back of your head and I'm going to make it really awkward for both of us.
Really intense eye contact as well.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
Do it right back. Just hold their knees. Yeah.
You should. You should hug their thighs.
Probably get me slapped.
Yeah. So kind of demeaning though. Back to what you're saying is like hand and the knee thing. I know like talking quiet is a big thing too. Oh, like they start talking like that puppy dog kind of. Do you ever get that?
I don't think I've ever had that before, but I know exactly what you're talking
like,
about.
Oh, I was also like when I was in the wheelchair, I was like 137 pounds. I was like just pale white, like missing a leg. This one's half off. I had tubes coming from everywhere too. So like I did get the like feel bad factor, and I think that's why like for me, I just like dove into the gym, because I was like, it's tired of just everybody feeling like I was. Just this, I felt like dead weight almost,
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of got that a lot too. It's just like, oh, poor you.
Right.
And I hated that.
I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about the iBot though. It's like, is it can elevate, and you're literally looking at people right in the eye.
Yeah.
And that is really cool.
Yeah, so
super cool.
So has that been a great tool for you?
It has. Yeah, in fact, I've got a 3D tournament next month that I'm going to shoot from the iBot because it can go all over, everywhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
Off-road, in the dirt.
Have you been to the beach yet with it?
No, we have not gone to the beach yet.
It's supposed to just tear through the sand like no problem.
Nice. We got to go.
Which is like, for anyone who realizes, like when you're in a chair, you don't go to the beach.
Yeah,
You just don't go to the beach.
that's right. That's exactly right. You sit on the boardwalk or you just kind of watch everybody else. But I'd like to get it out in the sand. I've had it on the trails behind our house and
Nice.
in the dirt. And I did a tournament in it last year that was just awesome.
Nice.
It's kind of adventure or discovery learning because I was like, oh, let's see what this thing will do.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
yeah.
off the road
And
into the
have
dirt.
you taken it up and down stairs?
I have not.
Okay.
Suk and I
did the
haven't
training,
finished the
but-
training on that yet.
Okay.
I know we've had it for a little bit more than a year, actually almost 2 years, more than 2 years, and we haven't finished that part of the training. So I need to get back to the VA and have them work us through that part of the training.
Okay.
But
Well, you let us know, and
Okay.
we'll get you hooked up if you need an appointment. We can
Yeah.
always bring down the Mobius spot people too to do
Okay.
that training. But pretty interesting. Those things, yeah, like by yourself, go up and down stairs.
yeah,
And
So wild.
it's kind of like terrifying at first, like the training, because you're leaning back,
Right.
pretty crazy, but
In a big heavy chair too, like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, interesting. But did you know the inventor of it, Dean Kamen, invented the Segway as well? That's where a lot of the technology comes from.
really?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that. That's cool.
Yep,
Huh. Awesome. Well, that makes sense, actually.
makes sense.
It kind of sees some similar tech
The
threads.
wheels,
Yeah.
yeah. That's very cool.
Crazy mad scientist.
Right.
He's a mad scientist. Yeah, he's like the Willy Wonka of gadgets, I think.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat, but yeah, he's created these things that really make a difference, I think.
Huge.
I mean,
Very much so.
really cool stuff.
Very much so.
So,
Oh, I just wanted to ping on the archery that you're doing. So you said you have a 3D tournament coming up.
We do. Yeah, it's a local tournament that's put on by a veteran service organization. I don't know if I can plug them or not.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, Enduring Freedom Company,
Okay.
which is run by a lady named Lisa Lopez, who's a recently retired Command Master Chief from the Air Force. And her and her fiance, Scott, are just huge advocates for the veteran community, the disabled veteran community. Mm-hmm. And they started hosting this shoot last year. This will be the second annual. It's a ton of fun. And archery's a blast anyways. I'm just kind of obsessed with it, frankly. But it's a great way to... because it's a veteran-centric tournament, you get a lot of disabled veterans out there.
Yeah.
Guys get introduced to the sport for the first time.
Fantastic.
Get outside, and I just can't sing its praises loud enough.
yeah, and this is how you got connected with Jason Dubansky as well.
Yeah, Jason and I just missed each other in the VA hospital by a couple of months. He came in as I was leaving, and we kind of established a friendship after that. He introduced me to archery about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I've been obsessed ever since. Jason's amazing. He shoots really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he just won the gold medal in Paris.
That's right. An Olympic
for
gold
archery.
medal.
Olympic gold medal.
And
Incredible.
Incredible.
It really is incredible, and super happy for him. Frankly, he shot his ass off. He dug deep and pulled it out when he needed to. Just a tremendous athlete.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling he's going to be kind of the guy to beat for the next few years internationally, because I think now that he's got this victory under his belt, I feel like he's going to develop kind of that Tiger Woods mentality.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
Ride
just
that
gonna
wave.
dig
Yeah. he
dig into it a little bit more.
100%.
Yeah, there's kind of two types of people, right? Ones that get a little fat, sassy, and complacent, and those who just like dive in more and they're unbeatable for years.
I think
he's one of those types.
He strikes me as that type. So presents a challenge, obviously. It's not a bad challenge to have.
That's competition.
That's right.
You better get your ass to work.
That's exactly right. What's Cam Hanes say? Nobody cares. Work harder.
Yeah.
So boom.
Essentially.
Yeah, that's fine. So
Essentially.
but it's really cool. I'm super happy for him. And I have an understanding of how much effort and time and work he put into it. Mm-hmm. And this is just validation of that mentality, you know, and it's kind of what we alluded to before.
Yeah.
He isn't letting, his disability hold him back.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of said, no.
Well, he's done a pretty rare thing, and that's win a gold medal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible feat, and it goes to show you the resilience of those that have that kind of like selfless service mindset, those core values that are implemented into them to just drive on and keep kicking ass.
Yeah.
And what better teacher, to be honest, like than a gold medal winner,
Right.
for you, like 7 years ago, you're learning with Jason.
Yep.
Now, he's going to teach you those tips and tricks from exactly the same shooting platform,
Right.
So I think that's an incredible opportunity for you too, to get out there and do something pretty incredible. So you're doing competitions?
We didn't compete this last year. I had intended to go to the trials, to go to Paris. But my wife had some health issues that we needed to get taken care of. And so it just kind of threw everything out of kilter. We weren't able to compete this year. Most definitely competing to go to Los Angeles in 28.
Okay.
And we're going to continue next year to do some of the trials. Maybe an outside chance that we go to Korea to shoot the Para World Championships next year. That would be kind of an interesting thing to do, the 10-year mark
going
of
back
my
to
injury.
Korea.
And there might be some closure there, which might be kind of useful as well.
Absolutely. You've not been back since, I'm assuming?
No, we haven't. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm all into competing. Indoor season starts in about 3 weeks.
Okay.
And so we're practicing right now for trying to compete locally and statewide, and then go from there.
So you're coming for Jason's gold, huh?
I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. Throwing the gauntlet down.
Say that. It's you know what? I got to compete against myself. All my problems and challenges are.
Damn, you have to be so boring with
Yeah.
that.
You know what? He and I can get on a podcast together, and we'll
You
go
know what?
shit talk from there.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. We should have both you guys on. So Jason's going to be on in the next couple weeks.
Nice.
Talk
Good.
about his experience with winning the gold medal.
Yeah.
But it would be great to have you guys both on a little raconteur.
I look forward to listening to that podcast too, because I'm very curious to hear what his thoughts and experiences were, and that is the stage, right?
Yeah,
I
the
mean, you
world
just
stage.
don't get
Yeah.
a whole lot more visibility than that. And
Yeah, an Olympic gold medal.
oh my
That's-
goodness,
That's every child's dream.
Sure.
Do you think he'll be on the next Wheaties box? Speaking of,
why not?
I hope
Yeah,
so.
put him
have
on there.
Wheaties?
I hope
that's
so.
a good question.
Yeah.
Tiger, I remember that after he won the medal, he was on the Wheaties box.
They should put him on there. I mean, look at what he's accomplished.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
It really did. And
That would, shout out to you, Wheaties, Kellogg, whoever it
If
is.
you're listening right now.
right.
Someone's gonna
Put
probably
Tabansky on the box.
crucify me for getting the wrong brand.
Right on.
Sorry, I don't have processed foods.
Yeah, exactly.
It's owned by Coca-Cola Halliburton Inc. Yeah.
And Pfizer.
Yeah.
A little sprinkle of Johnson and Johnson on there.
Yeah,
There
right.
we go.
So outside of archery, I think it's really important to keep the mind busy. Especially like dealing with what you struggled with in the past. But we're over that now. What are we doing with our time outside of archery and some of the other hobbies you have? Some of the, what you look at doing on a daily basis.
It's not really daily, but I sit on the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities.
Fantastic.
And in that role, I work with, 11, 12 other committee members and a small staff to develop policy recommendations for the governor and the legislature to address disability issues in the state and across the state.
It's incredible.
Fantastic.
It's interesting. I've been doing it now for, 4.5 years.
Okay.
I think January, February.
What are some of the biggest noteworthy achievements you've made in that kind of position? As far as any policy changes or hey, a ramp needs to go here.
Let's see. I'm struggling just because we did something a couple of years ago, but it wasn't on the governor's committee. It was separate as part of the Paralyzed Veterans for America.
It's fine. Let's hear that.
Well, it might create some enemies, but
If anyone's got a problem with whatever you're about to say, they can talk to us first.
that's good to know.
They can talk to us first.
The
Valid point.
Yeah.
many years ago, Texas passed a law that said if you had DV license plates,
Oh, Dave might be upset about this, actually. Hang on.
I just got a ticket for parking in handicap with Purple Heart plates.
really?
Oh, they changed the law 2 years ago here in Texas.
Yes.
Is this where we're going?
That's
Oh, this is
punch me. Man,
this
you
is
can
funny now.
Punch me in the face then.
Oh, it was you.
Well, it wasn't.
It's even funnier now.
So I'll accept some responsibility of it, but
Fuck.
there was truly a
All
group
right,
of
let's
people.
hear it.
Anyways,
That's so funny.
several years ago, Texas made it so that if you had DV license plates, you could park in disabled parking. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because, disabled veteran.
Yeah.
The problem was that it was being widely abused.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And people were using DV plates to park in those spots that really didn't need it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what that was doing was taking those spots from people that truly needed it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking just wheelchair people.
Yeah.
People that have kidney disease. They can't walk more than 120, 100 or 200 yards at a time before they got to stop.
Well, I have DV plates. I shouldn't be parking in a handicap spot.
Well, okay, sure.
Yeah. I shouldn't be. There's no reason for it.
Well, and part of the problem is because the threshold for DV plates is much lower than the threshold for a disabled parking
It's like
placard.
40%, I believe.
I think you're right.
I think you just have to have the VA rating, right?
I think so.
40%.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
40%.
So, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, one of the members of the PVA, working in conjunction with the state senator out in the Braunfels district, decided to create a piece of legislation that said that if you were going to park in disabled parking, you had to have a blue or red plaque. Mm-hmm. And it took quite a while, about 6 years, to ultimately get it passed, and a lot of kind of consensus building. But it did get passed about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so now, to park in a disabled spot, you have to have the blue or red placard, which unfortunately is probably why you got a ticket.
I got a ticket because they didn't send the memo out. Maybe they did.
It's like anything else, it's this is one of the things I've learned on the governor's committee is policies are always broad brushes. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really difficult to create policies. It may be impossible to create a policy that is going to be so tailored that it addresses every single need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in some ways, it's kind of the a drawback of our system, a democratic system, right? It's majority rule, minority rights. Mm-hmm. And there has been pushback because, there are people that maybe don't meet the threshold for the placard, but they probably do need access to those spots.
Yeah.
Amputees are a good example.
You know what? I do. I agree with you and Christian. I think that it is a policy that is abused. Yes, there was a frustrated moment for me. Did it take me, a couple hours to go down to the, tax assessor's office and get one.
Right.
That was easy. I got a placard, went to court, waived it. That's fine. I see where you're coming from, and it makes sense to me. Is you're abusing the policy. You're abusing the policy here. And there is people that are going to be like, well, I serve my country and I can't even, park in disabled spot. Well, I think that we should also implement a policy to take it away, the red and blue from obesity.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I totally agree with you.
Like, maybe have a pass that says you should park in the back of the parking lot to get your
Get some more exercise.
Yeah. Extra steps.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, you know what?
There's only one cure.
Treat the symptom.
Right.
Treat the symptom.
It is, and that's part of the frustration of doing kind of anything in government is you're always going to have issues where no matter what you do, regardless of what your noble intent is, somebody's probably going to be put out.
Sure.
Someone's probably not going to be satisfied.
You can't make everybody happy.
Right. The DV thing was clearly being abused.
Yeah, 100%.
Agreed.
Still today.
It is 100%.
Yeah.
Agreed. I might have different opinions on the Purple Heart plate. You know what I mean?
So that makes sense to me
But
as well, though.
I also know I also know people who got, the $1 million wound, right? The little piece of shrapnel for you should not be parking in. So
Right.
I get it. Blue or red standard, like a little bit more insight. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that was separate from the governor's committee. I'm struggling to come up with something that we've done on the governor's committee, which sounds terrible. But a lot of what we do focuses on education and the intellectual disabled or intellectual IDD community. And it's normally we'll pass or we'll put forward, 70 policy proposals per legislative session. Maybe 20 or 25 of them will make it onto the actual floor just because there's so much to do in so little time.
Sure.
And there's no shortage of pet projects that always seem to take precedence from different legislators around the state. The organization itself does a pretty good job. I just last week was in Galveston. We were supporting a disabled. Sorry, that's my colostomy bag. Disabled activity, disabled sports, disabled recreation fair. So they put on these different stations, and kids, families from the disabled community come around and they get to try different adapted sports.
Okay.
And so the governor's committee was supporting that.
Nice.
I was there as kind of the ambassador. I also got to demonstrate archery, which is pretty cool. And that's one of the coolest things is to watch these kids who have incredible disabilities. They're starting life with, a real challenge in front of them, physically, intellectually. But they learn how to pull a bow back and they shoot an arrow, and the smile on those kids' faces makes it completely worth it.
Yeah.
Completely worth it.
Oh, yeah.
And then it makes you think like, well, why can't we throw more resources at this problem than some of the other problems that we're throwing resources at,
Right.
statewide, nationwide, whatever.
Even internationally, like we're sending money to other places when that should go
Right.
back to us,
Right.
back to these communities, back to these kids.
Agreed.
The future of this country.
And in some ways that kind of almost brings us all full circle. It's another way to serve.
Yeah.
And it's another way to help a community maybe that, can use some assistance, use some visibility, use some advocacy, some awareness.
Yeah.
And so it's good work. I actually am fortunate to chair the subcommittee for adapted sports and recreation as part of the governor's committee.
Okay.
And that's cool. We're working on some really interesting things. One has to do with adapted fishing, which I think we we'll have a little bit of a fight, but that's okay. It'll be a worthwhile fight. And then I think we're also going to probably work on trying to get more adapted sports included in the high school sports curriculums.
Nice.
Trying to.
Yeah.
Right now, a lot of adapted sports are just at the club level.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of kids don't know what sports are out there. Kids that are disabled, they don't know what is out there for them. There's one of the Paralympians, Jordan White from Austin. He had no idea that archery was out there until he was introduced to it by somebody at a camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this kid picked it up, 3 years ago? He just competed in Paris. And he's 15.
Wow.
He's a prodigy. He's going to go on, and he's going to be an amazing athlete if he sticks with it for the next 5 or 10 years.
Absolutely.
So if that's one kid that didn't even know it existed, how many other kids are out there that don't know about adapted sports and recreational activities that they can do regardless of what limitations their body has or even their mind?
Yeah.
And I'm an absolute all-in advocate on recreation and sports as therapy, and I think it goes well beyond simply just physical activity. Mm-hmm. It really has a huge effect up here. Mm-hmm. I think strong body, strong mind, strong mind, strong body.
Yep.
And that's why we need to do it. That's why it probably needs a little bit more attention. Mm-hmm. And so I'm off my pitch.
No, I think it's beautiful work, and you got a beautiful heart too. And sometimes I like to kind of bring it back to, what happens if you didn't, go for that bike ride in the morning, know, and the changes that you're making today, are all for the better, and they're helping the communities out. So some of the trials and tribulations that you faced, the adversity that you faced, might have been a platform to help others out. Yeah. And it certainly has across the board. So
I don't mean to make it awkward. I'm a Christian. I should have said that at the very beginning. I just finished reading something about why God says no. Mm-hmm. And I prayed for years to recover my body. And maybe the reason is because there's work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I can be that advocate.
Absolutely. And you are. And you're continuing to do that with the changes you're making. So thanks for continuing to motivate and for being on the show today and talking about yourself.
I really appreciate you guys letting me come on. Thank you. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Really awesome. Y'all are doing great work.
Well,
thank you.
It's really cool.
So are you, Eric. Your
cool.
Your passion is infectious, and it's showcased beautifully. So thanks for what you do.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
This has been the Medevac podcast, ladies and gentlemen. If you are interested in hearing from someone specific topics, reach out to us. Easiest way is at the Instagram at Medevac podcast. Go follow us over there. Interact with content somehow. Leave a review. Share it with a friend or family member. You know what to do. We'll see you next week.
See you next time.
Bye.